hearing from the business executives, from the ministers, and from the academics you've been speaking to here at the New Economy Forum about the global economy? How optimistic or how pessimistic are people out there? How optimistic or pessimistic are you?
Well, first of all, it's been quite an exciting time, in a way, at this New Economy Forum of Bloomberg. But there's been a lot of worry, a lot of pessimism in the air. People are worried about the outlook for the global economy. Things are slowing down everywhere, except maybe the US that is still, doing relatively well. But China, of course, is slowing down, both for structural reasons, but also because of the trade and tariff wars that are going on right now. Europe, as you know, slowing down. Some emerging markets are also slowing down, and others, like some countries on my continent, are doing well. But all in all, there's a bit of, pessimism. There's also worry about possible decoupling or bifurcation in the world, and people are concerned. Are we going to have a two-track world, both in terms of the geopolitics, but also in terms of trade, in terms of technology? Is there going to be a track where the US is going one way with its own group, and China is going another way? And how will countries, will they feel trapped or compelled to go one way or the other? Nobody wants that. So the talk here is that, look, we've got to come together. The world is too intertwined now to really have this kind of division. We really have to find ways to cooperate, to talk and collaborate. So that's been the general thrust, but definitely some worry about the future.
How is that affecting, do you think, business investment decisions?
Well, you see, with what is happening now, there's a lot of uncertainty in the air, and business does not like uncertainty, as we know. So, there's some holding back of investments, and, that's part of what will also affect world growth. So I think there's a great desire, really, for us to get out of this conundrum, and a lot will depend on whether the US and China can come to terms.
Dr. Ngozi, you talk about all the concerns. We heard from Henry Kissinger yesterday saying that the US and China could be in the foothills of a Cold War. Is it as dire as that?
Well, there's certainly some feeling that the situation is dire if you listen to some quarters. Because there have been many false starts now where the markets even, news that things are going to be sorted out, there's some exuberance and then it doesn't work. But from what we heard from senior Chinese officials here during this new economy forum, I'm a little more optimistic than one would, because we heard from the vice premier who is involved in the trade talks, from some others, that, well, even though the situation is difficult, he feels optimistic that there'll be an agreement. I think the issue is it, how will it all work out? Is it going to be touch on so many issues? Because beyond the narrow trade and tariffs, there are a lot of other issues, technology, that are creeping into the discussion. Even Hong Kong and what is happening there is now affecting all of this. So hopefully on the narrow trade and tariff front, there can be some agreement and it doesn't get infected by some of these other issues.
I'm curious, how is the African continent navigating all of this? Because if you take a look at where Chinese investments have gone to over the last, 10 years or so, the African continent has gotten something like, $300 billion?
Well, I don't know about 300 billion, Haslinda. We have to be a little bit careful about the numbers when we talk about Chinese investment. On trade, China is the largest trading partner of the continent. And at peak in 2014, trade was about 220 billion. Now it's slightly less than 150. However, so Africa is actually at a very good point, believe it or not. I think we have about 6 of the 10 fastest growing economies in the world on the African continent. Countries like Ethiopia, Ghana, Tanzania, and so on are doing very well. Rwanda this time. But I think the issue for us is Africa is at a point where people are caught in Africa at this time. You have China that is interested. You now have Russia that has come in. You have Japan. You have all these China, Africa, Japan, Africa, Russia, Africa fora that are creeping up. So Africa feels in a really good place. It appreciates the fact that China is prepared to invest on the continent. In 2015, for instance, just to take 1 year, the total amount invested in infrastructure by China was about $21 billion, which is so large compared to 2 to 3 billion from some other countries. And we have a large infrastructure deficit. Africa needs about 100 billion a year for infrastructure. So China coming in is appreciated. It's not without its problems. We have to look at issues of debt. Countries should not take on too much debt that they cannot service, and China itself has to be careful so that it doesn't lend to countries that cannot afford to pay back. We have to look at issues of social and environmental sustainability. We must make sure that Africa is seen as an opportunity. Because 2/3 of our infrastructure is yet to be built, we can do it in a very low emissions way.
And corruption as well, which you fought against famously very hard indeed. Can I just get a quick question on Twitter? Have they done enough, do you think, to ensure that there aren't going to be Russian bots involved in the 2020 elections? You're on the board of the company.
Well, I think I'm very proud of what Twitter has done. You know, Jack Dorsey announced no political ads, and we're very conscious of having a platform that does not lend itself to distortions and being used during, for, you know, what do you want to call it? Not helpful purposes, nefarious purposes during elections. So, the board is very conscious. Jack is on top of it. Of course, I'm not sure we are going to be perfect, but I just want to assure you that we're so conscious and everything is being done to try to prevent the platform being misused.